All right, Justin, welcome back. Welcome back. So about to sort of launch into it, but your second time back after, second time back on the podcast.
Yeah.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
So, yeah, we were talking just offline pre-recording about some of the feedback that you got and some of the feedback that you got from the Gay Men Going Deeper podcast, which was good, heart affirming, but also a little scary. So hoping that all the feedback for this one is good, and
bring it on.
Yeah, look at you. It's like, I've got a couple of liters of coffee in my hand.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm ready to go. Like, all we need is a knuckle crack, and we're all good to go. So, okay, you good?
I'm good.
Excellent. Viewer, welcome. I've actually forgot to say hi to you. So you've joined for episode 35 of the podcast for gay men experiencing loneliness, connection over coffee. And so we're going to have a chat about numbing and how we numb. So if you were listening to the podcast rather than watching this, you'd be hearing right now an invitation to you to send me a picture, an appropriate picture, of course, of you enjoying a coffee or enjoying a coffee while or listening to the podcast, or a combination of both. Listening to the podcast and drinking coffee, and sending that to me on my socials for me to use on my socials as a way of building and fostering a sense of community, because this is something that we generally tend to do alone, and loneliness is very good at making us feel like we're alone, and the only person ever in the history of the world to feel and think like we are. But it's not the case. And there's a whole heap of people all around the globe who are watching, who listen, and very keen to make it feel like we're not alone. So send something to me on my socials on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, I guess, if that's what you want to do. Very, very happy to give you a shout out where you are in the world. Okay, so with that said, I have pressed, it's very early in the morning here, viewer. Justin is very kind in with his time, but trying to fit in between his work appointments as well. So the benefit of living on this good side of the dateline is sometimes, often, we have to stay up late or get up early. When Eastern Australia is the centre of the world, that's probably a good thing. So, you good?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. Hey, welcome to Connection Over Coffee with me, Phil McAuliffe, the Loneliness Guy. In this episode, we're going to have another conversation with my friend Justin Oberste about numbing and how and why we numb. Say hi, Justin.
Hello.
Before we jump in to this conversation, I do need to remind you that this is a podcast where we talk about the mental, emotional, and physical well-being of gay men. If that's going to offend you or anyone in earshot, now's the time for you to move on. But if you're down for a great conversation and a coffee about numbing and how and why we numb and what it can tell us, how about you and Justin go and have a chat with Michael on your way to getting a table, and I'll go get us a coffee. I'll see you in a moment. Okay, so as you and Justin, this is like, the power of imagination right now. You would be listening to Michael Diorio, a coach who I've partnered with, who does awesome work, absolutely fantastic work, helping his clients be who they are. If you feel that after reading some of my work, listening to some of my work, and some self-reflection, that you want to begin to take steps to learn from your loneliness, to reconnect with the world as the awesome person you are, feel free to, I can fully recommend Michael's services. And just feel free to reach out through the link in the episode description. Okay. Here you go. Justin, welcome back. How are you today?
I am good. Thanks for having me. So,
Justin, one of the things that I am really keen to talk about and is this topic of numbing.
Mm-hmm.
And for the listener, for the viewer, I also want to say hi and welcome, and just want to say, if this is the first time that you've joined me for Connection of Coffee, welcome. And if you're a repeat listener, repeat viewer, it's absolutely fantastic. Cue the cockatoo just going past early morning here. That sounds like a pterodactyl screaming. That's probably going to be on the podcast. Someone is not being killed outside. It's a cockatoo. But hashtag Australia. It is numbing and pressing play on this episode are linked, and because we can convince ourselves that we can't possibly be lonely, we kind of go and distract ourselves with something, and perhaps the mere act of pressing play has been a step for you in saying, no, I kind of want to dig into this a little more. I want to find out what this is all about. And this could be the first step or another step on you reconnecting with yourself, reconnecting with your loved ones and those most important to you, or reconnecting or connecting indeed with your community. So welcome. Justin.
Yes.
Why do we numb?
Well, sometimes emotions or things happening in our life, we don't know how to deal with them. We don't know how to feel them. So we avoid them. And we avoid them with numerous things. It could be just about anything.
Yeah. Forgive me. I just jumped into that question without you introducing yourself. How terrible.
Oh, were you numbed out?
Yeah, perhaps.
Talk about numbing.
This is the second episode that you've been on, so I'm like, yeah, let's just go into it. You're known, but perhaps you're not. This is terrible. What kind of a podcast host? What kind of a podcast host am I?
You're good.
Before we jump into that, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and why you're on here?
Yeah, my name is Justin Oberste. I'm a psychotherapist. I'm in Santa Barbara, California, and I specialize in sex therapy, religious-based trauma, and various addictions. So Phil brought me on to talk mainly about the numbing that we all, and I mean all, do, but especially, in particular to your audience, Phil, too, with gay men.
Yeah. And listener, viewer, if you've not not yet listened to the conversation that I had with Justin a few months ago. I think it's episode 32. And Justin wrote, and then we had a great conversation about the dark nights of the soul and how the loneliness of change. Go check that out. It's brilliant. And reading it constantly, whenever I refresh or we'll go back and read it, it really feels like it speaks to me. It's beautifully written, beautifully expressed. So yeah, go do yourself a favor after listening to this, and pour yourself something nice. Go get yourself another coffee, cup of tea or something stronger, and really settle in for a beautiful conversation. So we numb because it's sometimes what we are thinking and feeling, or is it thinking or feeling that it's, it's too much. It's too much. So we distract ourselves. And you said that we all do it, right? And why? I mean, the question that I've got for you here at this point is, well, how do you numb? If we all do it, how do you numb?
Yeah, it's I would say it's changed. There's various things I've done periodically through my life that probably were unhealthy, maybe some healthy, and we can talk a little bit about what's healthy, what's unhealthy. Yeah. And then now, gosh, that's a good question for now, because with my line of work, it's heavy. You're dealing with a lot of other people's emotions too. So sometimes it's hard to decipher what is mine and what is someone else's.
Yeah.
So probably now it's more, gosh, I'm thinking sometimes I'll just like not really binge watch, but I'll watch an episode of Friends or Will and Grace or something that you just really don't have to think anything, but just laugh. I would call that a form of numbing. And two, I probably should add, as far as numbing, I split it up into two categories: self-care and then coping mechanisms. And those can be very different things, which we can get into more as well. But if I'm experiencing some really intense emotions, I go into things that I know that help me, don't hurt me. Like I'll just start, like drugs or alcohol. Like I can understand it, and I've done that before where I've just drank too much. But that's actually harmful to your body. So that's not a very healthy coping mechanisms, and it doesn't fit under the umbrella of self-care, because it's really not taking care of you, because self-care leaves you feeling better afterwards, or at least neutral.
This is a brilliant point. This is a brilliant point. And at what point, in terms of let's use watching an episode or two of Friends, because I think that's watching watching a show like that, which from our past is it's comfortable, and whatever it is, whatever the show is, all these TV shows, and names are escaping me right now, but something like Friends, where is that tipping point between self-care, taking some time out to replenish, taking some time out to do something that refills your cup, versus using it to cope? Is it is there a hint in potentially rounding the corner between episodes 5 and 6 that it's turning into from self-care into coping? You know, where's that tipping point?
Yeah, what a great question. Because also, I want to say coping mechanisms aren't wrong either. Like, I want to normalize that too, because we only have a certain amount of internal resources. Sometimes we do have to go out to people, objects, food, sex. Like, we need that to help us. So, is there a line? Yeah, there's going to be a line where it's probably really unhealthy. You know, you're binge drinking and you're actually making things worse and you're hurting your health. So that's more harmful. You know, so that's kind of where it can go too far. And that's where I, as a therapist, come into more of a harm reduction model, where I'm not going to ask you to stop drinking if you're using it to numb or do drugs, but I am going to ask why do you need these coping mechanisms? Why are you using those particular ones? And how about we scale back a little bit on the drinking and drugs and kind of range our options for coping mechanisms? Like, how about next time, let's call a friend, or let's sit and journal, or sit in that feeling and try to address the actual issue instead.
Yeah, because that's the thing. It's is it like the coping there is, you know, does it start out as something that, you know, is self-care, but becomes, I don't want to say an addiction, because I'm not qualified to say, you know, when something becomes an addiction, but when something becomes potentially a habit, and, you know, something like an uncomfortable feeling is being felt, so we kind of fall into that kind of habit of, you know, again, picking up the remote and you know, looking at you know, watching a Friends episode, for example, that you know, that kind of becomes something automatic. Is that something that we need to sort of watch, where we're turning, you know, that good, and you're right, I completely agree, to completely like turning that that good coping mechanism, that good, well, not coping mechanism, but that self-care option into you know, where it tips into coping.
Right.
Is it what's the question I'm trying to ask here? It's like, it's about the like the habit that's formed about it. So could we be coping, engaging in numbing activities without really being aware of them?
Possibly. I mean, even if you're doing something just for coping, that's okay too. That's why I kind of want to say there's two options here: self-care, which will leave you feeling better and neutral, and then coping, which can leave you feeling better or worse. So sex or eating that pizza, you know, that, you know, food and stuff, that's okay sometimes. Like, it makes sense. Sometimes the emotions might be extremely overwhelming. The loneliness may be too much, or the grief or loss of a friend or loved one might be too much in that moment. So it's okay to look for those external resources. Now, if you're looking at it all the time to avoid, you know, what this is, what's going on, yeah, let's reevaluate. Like, why are we always turning to coping mechanisms? What is it? Something that you need to learn to actually tolerate within yourself? What is that? Is it something that's the coping's keeping you from actually making that change, or that career change, or ending that relationship, whatever it could be? The coping mechanisms could be hurting that. So it really is just sitting back or stepping back and really evaluating, paying attention to what you're doing and why. And that's hard for people. A lot of people don't know actually even how to do that.
Yeah, that is terrifying. That is terrifying, especially if what we are trying to process or suspect is lurking within is really hard, and like a really sort of uncomfortable, I want to say, an inconvenient truth about ourselves. And when it comes to loneliness, like it's really like language is hard at times, and because trying to, I mean, countless poets, countless songwriters through history have endeavored to encapsulate loneliness in, a sonnet, in a verse, in a chorus, whatever it is that goes right to it. And me being the loneliness guy, and me being good with words, sometimes like I find it very difficult to adequately plumb the depths of the like the thoughts and feelings of loneliness. But I kind of settle on it feeling horrid. It's a horrid feeling because it just, for the merest flash within us, we question our worth. We question our worthiness. We question, and we can, over time, completely be unaware that that's what we're doing. And it's, stopping and stopping what we're doing, recognizing that we're numbing, that what has turned, perhaps as what we have started as self-care, because we've been afraid, we've been concerned for our own welfare, and we've gone to protect ourselves from a threat and retreated into ourselves. We, at some point has turned from self-care into coping / a habit. And when it comes to something like loneliness, which has at its core a feeling of not being worthy, it's no wonder that we numb that we seek to avoid that, because
you don't know what to do with it when you put it out there, when you make the implicit explicit. And that's something that's good to mention. You've actually mentioned a few things which are good, which is verbiage, knowing how to communicate it. That's hard for everyone.
Yeah.
And also, the feeling of worthiness. And that's something a lot of gay men in particular, across the board, at a core, would probably admit to feeling or trying to hide or cover up. So where that comes from is another story, but you can't do anything about it unless you recognize it and talk about it. Again, bringing it out, making that implicit explicit, giving it words, giving it a character, identifying it. That's so hard for a lot of people to even go there. And then once they do, what do they do next?
That's it. And it like it's one thing to admit it, and then it's another thing to start doing something about it. And I think, the difficulty, and like the difficulty I'm having right now in this recording, which doesn't lend itself to podcasting excellence, but it is like I'm trying to enunciate here the kind of those depths of loneliness, that feeling, that horrible feeling about ourselves and our worth. And the choice that we have, when we feel that, when we feel either with the subtlety of a freight train, roaring through us, or that little hint, that little flash of a feeling that we might get, that might we might experience through, the course of a regular day, or when triggered by something specific.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's the merest flash or the greatest kind of, unavoidable feeling within ourselves. It's one thing to feel it and acknowledge it, but it's another thing to then express it. And I think that we're getting into, another kind of topic that I wrote on like in 2020, about how to communicate your loneliness. And it was the topic was, so you're lonely, what next? And it goes to that point of not having the words, not knowing what to say, and not knowing how to respond when someone says that they're thinking and feeling lonely. Not trying to fix it, but allowing the experience to happen and communicating it, even communicating it, in a ham-fisted way, is still communicating it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, viewer, listener, this is, numbing and recognizing how we numb is, the wedge, the entree into this kind of deeper reflection, and identifying whether or not the self-care, the numbing that's going on is self-care, or if it's sort of gone to another side of the spectrum into coping.
Mm-hmm. Which either makes it better or worse.
Yeah. So when we, I want to go to coping, or methods of numbing. But when, I want to get into that just after this break. So, viewer, you would be listening to an invitation on the podcast to help me grow this work at the Loneliness Guy, so I could be a resource, the go-to resource for gay men experiencing loneliness wherever they are in the world, to get some help, to get some advice, and to take then some steps to help them learn from and move past their loneliness. I've got such a bold vision for the future of this work, but I need some help to begin growing this work beyond the blog, beyond the podcast, and beyond the time that I can allocate it to it now, working full time. So if you want to learn more about the vision, or indeed you share in this bold vision, please go to thelonelinessguy.com/invest. There's a link in the episode description, and learn more about how you can support me, knowing that every dollar, every yen, every shekel, every pound, whatever you can, whatever you're able to provide, will be made to work extremely hard. So more information at that link in the episode description. So welcome back. So the question is about how the coping mechanism that we are doing, how that can tip into that which doesn't serve us. I was going to say bad, but that which doesn't serve us. And how even the good techniques can tip into that coping.
Mhm.
So one of the things that I see a lot and experience within myself, and I shared this in the podcast, in the blog post, was for me, it's work. So for you, it's, picking up the remote and watching Joey and Chandler and Ross, Rachel, Monica, and Phoebe, go about their lives in the 90s in New York.
With all the homophobic undertones.
Yes. Not necessarily.
Rough.
I know. I was just thinking
The
about the other
90s.
day. Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. And not necessarily undertones.
Some of it's pretty blatant. Even there's a lot of racism in there too. I mean, the writing then, it's and I was young when it was on, so I wasn't necessarily keenly aware of what was happening. But as an adult and very, and doing a lot of that personal work myself with all those things, it's like, wow, this is bad.
Yeah.
So it's hard to tune out sometimes with that stuff, but Golden Girls sometimes is good too. There's some racism in that too, but geez.
Yeah. I think many times, watching an episode of Friends in particular, where it is very like, it's like, that's not funny.
Yeah.
It's not funny. And which is good. Like we're growing, we're learning.
Yes. Our awareness is,
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
So for me, I shared that it was work.
Yeah.
And for me, I shared it was exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to share just a moment here, like when I was kind of reckoning and wrestling with my sexuality,
mm-hmm.
I I found myself literally running from my problems.
Understandably.
Yeah. And,
yeah.
But it was a good way, like, it's great. I was training for a half marathon in Korea. And it was a good thing. I was doing it with some people and things like that, but running like 25, 30 kilometers in a week, and just sort of putting on my shoes and running for a couple of hours, it was a happy place and stuff. But I realized that there was another edge to that coin. There was another edge to the sword. There was another side to the coin. So it was good. I was training for an event that I'd set the goal for, but there was a comfort in there. I didn't have to deal with myself emotionally when I was running.
Phil, I'm going to give you a little plot twist. You may have actually been running towards something. I mean, look where you are now.
I'll accept
it may
that.
It may have felt like something else possibly, but it actually probably was also you running towards something.
I'll accept that. That's a good plot twist. I had never thought of that until just now.
That's something I want to bring up too, because a lot of us with coping mechanisms and self-care, even in that beautiful example you gave, are also ways that we are understandably trying to come out. And I don't mean just sexually. I mean, in so many, come out more emotionally, come out, whatever it could be. So a lot of these things, us queer gay people, it's understandable, these coping mechanisms, these self-care things that we have to reinvent, or sometimes they go a little sour and we have to kind of step back and reevaluate. Like, was that actually helpful? Maybe not. Maybe it actually was really helpful. So it's there's so much fluidity with this, even with this numbness and this, why are we even doing it? It just goes everywhere.
And I think that's key. That's the key. And where we are numbing, the range all the way, the destructive through to the constructive through to the instructive. Well, it's always instructive, whether it's destructive, constructive, it's always telling us something about what's going on. And I think that's the key. That's the key here, because when it comes to loneliness, as you know, tried to articulate in this conversation, that the thoughts and feelings of loneliness are just so shit. Like, if we just stop and pause for a moment and say pretty much the obvious here, in that our loneliness, if it's as the result, not after a breakup, not coming from grief, and you know, if our loneliness is sort of more chronic, then you know, if we are in articulating it, we kind of get to that point where we're just like, I'm not worthy. I'm not a worthy human. And whether I believe that in myself or I feel that others think that about me, either way, that's horrible.
And we're taught culturally, maybe not even just, it's probably cross cultures really, to eliminate it. And what I mean by eliminate is eliminate those feelings, maybe even that awareness, which stunts us, because then there's no growth or transformation when you do that. So instead, make awareness and acceptance of it, of those realizations, of those emotions. And once you do that, then you can actually do something about it. What could help me? What could help me feel more worthy? Why am I not feeling worthy in the first place? That's an interesting, conversation and narrative. And you may not find that out on your own. You need help. You're going to need people, therapists, friends, those you can confide in to talk about these things. The more and more awareness you bring, the more you can act on it and do something about it. But we just think we have to eliminate these really uncomfortable things. I've told friends before, and even like professors at school, the world would completely change if we would just actually feel our feelings. Now, there's another element to that, because it would be like baby vampires are unleashed on the world, like in Twilight, they're just bloodsuckers. So everybody would go crazy. So you also have to throw in there some education around how to actually feel emotions and to regulate yourself. And we as a culture, society, don't know how to do that. I mean, turn on the news, open up social media. We don't know how to regulate our emotions whatsoever. So that's where, honestly, like therapy can come in and really help you be more self-aware, helps you in return know how to identify the emotions, how to calm yourself, how to actually feel them and let them out.
And that's critical. That's critical. When it comes to loneliness, it's the feeling of loneliness. And when it is, sometimes, on that sort of, I'm big on spectrums today, like, and where it's, the subtlety of a freight train roaring through you, those feelings, or, that little flash, like gold in the bottom of a pan, you can kind of just experience it for just the merest of moments. What to do next, or not to do, as is the case, because
that's a good thought. I'm just going to jump in with that, because the freight train is great, where that's where coping mechanisms can help, because we need to slow that train down. Let's give it some stops along the way. So order that pizza, have sex with your partner or hook up or whatever, but let's keep the train's going to keep going. So what I mean by keep going is you're still you're aware, of what's happening. You're aware of these emotions. You need some stops along the way, and that's okay, but you're still allowing it to come through. You're not forcing it, and you're not rushing it, because some people do that. So you're actually just existing in it, letting it do its work, kind of like riding a wave.
Yeah, that's a really good analogy. Where, yeah, like the wave is going to take you where the wave is going.
Mm-hmm.
I can feel an analogy coming on where like
accept the wave, accept where it's going.
Because we're all taught, particularly here in Australia, where so many of us live by within 10 minutes of or 10 kilometers, I think it is, of the ocean. And we're all sort of taught like good surf safety, and you let the water do its thing. When you fight the wave, that's when you become exhausted. That's when you become at risk of drowning. And waves always pass. And I guess it's giving us the skill to dive under the wave, to gently go up with the wave or jump over the wave, but to handle the wave and to have people who are there to help us, like meet the wave as they come and respond accordingly.
Let it roll to completion.
Yeah.
Don't hit the brakes, don't hit the gas. Let the process come to a complete. So just let it roll. Yeah. And for me, which is interesting, because you're talking about running, like some sort of physical activity is a good discharge for me.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
And I tend to think more somatically with stuff anyways, with our nervous systems and things. So it's a really good kind of discharge, some sort of physical exercise.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that the work that I do here at the Loneliness Guy is very mentally and emotionally taxing. And
same.
Yeah. Like look at who I'm talking to, and Justin, there are some times when I would really like to write a blog or to have a podcast comparing sexy firemen holding puppies, sexy shirtless firemen holding puppies, and debating the pros and cons of that. But that's not me. That's not me. And I really, sometimes really do wish that, what I felt called to do and, to put out into the world wasn't so emotionally shit as loneliness. But here I am. And, that kind of, that discharge is great. And I find, real balance in doing something like moving my body each day. So, making sure that I get my 10,000 steps in, for instance, or taking the slow route outside rather than driving or something like that, getting out and walking rather than driving. But is it fair to say that the entrance to the identifying how we're numbing begets a question about, is this self-care or is this coping? Not necessarily is this good or bad, but is this self-care? Does this build me up, or is this not serving me? And then the next stage down, or the next stage in, beyond putting it on that scale of self-care through to coping, is a question of why.
Yep.
Like, why am I doing this?
Yeah. What am I avoiding?
Yeah.
Or am I too comfortable is another thing too.
How so?
Well, we all have kind of a window of tolerance of what we are comfortable with, what we're not comfortable with. And I honestly think, numbing can have a form of that, where we just have every aspect of our life very cozy and neat.
Yeah.
And nothing disrupts it. So nothing triggers us. It's all taken care of, because when we're triggered, that's a really bad thing. When honestly, like, I actually love triggers, like working with triggers with people, because what it means is it's some sort of disconnection from ourselves. So when we're triggered, we tend to go after the person that triggered it, when actually it's our issue. It is some sort of unprocessed pain.
Yeah.
And when we have our environment and stuff very controlled, and I'll even say numbed to a certain degree, we don't expand as people.
Yeah.
We stay stuck. We stay really stuck. We stay in that 9-to-5 job, and then we just party on the weekends, and we're not going anywhere. We're just walking around kind of aimlessly, avoiding.
Yeah. I think there's a whole lot in there about comfort and loneliness, and having the creature comforts, and as kind of like numbing writ large in life. Like, everything about life can kind of look as if it's numbing.
Yeah.
Like,
and
life
loneliness
itself.
life itself, but loneliness is a good segue, because why are you so lonely? Are you really difficult to date?
Yeah.
Are you a difficult person? Are you a bitter person? Like, these are things that need to be evaluated. Like, look at yourself. Like, there might be a reason I am I in that victim mentality? Is it always someone else's fault? Are you always blaming other people? There's so much that we need to be aware of.
Yeah. Which, is endlessly fascinating. I find it's endlessly fascinating because, and if we suspect that we have a problem, it's far easier at times to make it, to have other things, other issues, other people as the problem rather than ourselves.
Which kind of can be a form of numbing when you really think about it.
Yeah, right.
It's constantly putting that, which keeps everything at surface. That's the thing. When I work with people, or have had friends that really are always blaming exterior things, it just keeps it surface. There's no depth to it. There's no transcendence.
Yeah.
You just get stuck in it.
Yeah. Dare I say, I suffer from the other thing, the other side of the coin. If one suffers from the other side of the coin. I'm not good with the words today. I apologize, but it is. It is just not coming to me. No, I'm not feeling erudite today. But like, I have a superpower of making everything about me. There could be two people who I've never met in Iceland fighting, and somehow it would be, something that I do, that I've done. And, but specifically something, like there's an event, there's something going on, and, I have this ability to deeply internalize it rather than keep it at arm's length. And that to me is, something that I've been working on. And, as awesome as I am not the center of everybody's universe. As awesome as I am not at the center of the universe, and I can't control everything and everyone and everyone's thoughts, everyone's emotions, everyone's experience of life. I can't do that. So yeah,
that's great. Yeah, it's interesting. It's more of a relational thing, is what you're talking about, like relating to others, like picking up on what they're feeling or what they're sensing, or do they want to say something too?
yeah,
And just being really relational with them and in the moment and in the present.
yeah, and for me, that's it's not necessarily numbing. I think it's like the opposite of numbing. It's like, I don't know, like, is the opposite of numbing hyper feeling or something like that, just sort of being hyper something, I don't know. But yeah, Justin, what's your advice for the listener, for the viewer? What's your advice? What's your parting thought for the gay man experiencing loneliness, the listener experiencing loneliness? What's your final thought?
Gosh, great question. It would be, processing it as I'm sitting here, it would be so for the gay men listening, you are in a world, it is getting a little bit better, but you're in a world where you are not allowed to feel, you are not allowed to be who you are. And now you're expected to operate like a normal person in society without any issues. But we have them. We all have them. And because we've been so suppressed, we need to learn again how to feel. And we don't want to feel the uncomfortable feelings, but we need to. And in order for us to do that, to have the freedom to do that, it takes work. It takes daily work. And we have to be able to sit in them, give them a voice in order to expand. Now, we don't also have a lot of mirroring in this world as to what like a successful gay man would be. There's, options or whatever, but we don't have a path or direction really planned for us. We're kind of figuring it out as we go. So we need to also be compassionate and gentle with ourselves. And it's okay to numb sometimes. It's okay to have those coping mechanisms because it's difficult work. But why are they there? What are we avoiding? How can we become a better lover? How can we become a better person, a listener, an empathizer, a healer? And gay men have always been the center of societies and have held them together for centuries, since the beginning. And in the past few centuries, that's changed. And we can change that. It's been more of a cultural thing. We can kind of come home to ourselves and to who we are and our inner power, because we are worthy. In fact, we can really change the world ourselves. And we're probably going to have to.
I'm so glad. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Justin, I'm so glad that the world has you. And I'm so glad that you're being you in the world, as uncomfortable as that might be, as tough as that might be, and as joyful as that might be too. I'm so glad that you're here. I really do hope that friends, I really do hope that Will and Grace continues to replenish and restore you in the most awesome way, so you can continue to be you in the world. Because the world really does need you to be you, just like the world needs me to be me. And listener, viewer, the world needs you to be who you are. Justin, thank you so much for spending some time with us in this episode. It's been brilliant. And the the invitation is there to us all to pay attention to our loneliness, not to our loneliness, to how we are numbing. And if we are numbing our loneliness, or if we are numbing whatever it is, that we then kindly and curiously reflect on why we're doing it. Very much look forward to having you on the podcast again in sometime in the future, Justin, and to share more of your just beautiful insight and wisdom.
Thank you, Phil.
And listener, viewer, that's it for this coffee. Please give this episode a rating through the service on which you're now listening, and know that sharing is caring. Please do feel free to share this through your networks, which makes it sound like a business thing, but share it with your friends to know that they're not alone either. Until next time, thanks so much. Be awesome, be kind, but be you. I'll see you later.